Real quick, guys, want to give you a heads up that our sponsor, Babbel, which is an awesome language learning app, is giving you 25% off when you use the link under this video. I used Babbel for just a few weeks before I left for my recent trip to Italy. I knew very little Italian before that, and I was actually pretty surprised how easily I could hold a conversation in Italian. Because of what I learned using Babbel, the lessons were easy to fit into my schedule, just 15 minutes a day. The progress I've made is motivating me to stick with it. I think Babbel really is the best app to learn a language. Go check it out. You'll get 25% off using the link under this video. In the latest news from the sort of hear no evil, see no evil camp, Donald Trump has fired the internal pollsters that I told you about last week, who did polls for Trump in really important battleground states and came back to him and said, hey, you're down in these states. In hypothetical matchups against Biden, Bernie, Warren, you're losing. You're losing in these states. And the numbers were not super surprising because Trump's own internal polls found he was down to Biden in Michigan and Wisconsin. And his favorability has been negative in Michigan and Wisconsin for a while. In other words, the numbers Trump got from his pollsters were completely and totally consistent with what the public information has been for several months, which was that Trump is not doing well in these states. And if the election were held today, he would likely lose. Trump had internal polls from 17 different states, and the numbers were very concerning in many of them. And what Donald Trump has done, instead of saying, wow, I really need to get a campaign together, he has instead fired the pollsters, effectively saying, kill the messenger. Baselitz and Associates have been fired. Adam Geller, who has been a pollster for Trump since 2016, has been fired. The polling company run by Brett Lloyd has been fired. And fascinatingly, it's being reported that Donald Trump fired them not only or specifically because Trump necessarily thinks the polls are wrong, but because Trump is also furious about the fact that the polls leaked, which is so funny because every public poll said the exact same thing. In other words, even without the internal polls leaking, every poll that is being done right now shows that Donald Trump is down in those key battleground states. So I don't believe for a second that being down isn't a factor. Trump obviously doesn't like polls that say that he's down. But even if he thinks the numbers are false, he seems genuinely angry with the pollsters that the information became public, which is just so silly because it's all public anyway. So the reaction we want to this is the same as what I said last week. We want Donald Trump to think he's winning, okay? If Donald Trump thinks he's winning, he'll campaign less. He'll take more for granted, and it will just make it more likely that Donald Trump will actually end up losing in 2020. And part of this is Donald Trump's fragile ego, which we've become very well acquainted with over the last couple of years. Part of this is Trump's narcissism, as Bill Eddy pointed out and told us about on yesterday's program, a licensed mental health professional. But the most important thing in the end is that Democrats benefit from a Trump that believes that he's ahead. We want Trump to campaign less, which he will do if he thinks he's winning. So even though it's hilarious that Donald Trump is so triggered by negative polls that he's firing pollsters and saying suppress the information, the less Trump campaigns, the better off the eventual Democratic nominee will be. Now, imagine working at the White House now. Trump wants just good news. So if you work at the White House, whether you're a pollster, a staffer, an aide, whatever, you are in the position where you either have to lie to Trump and give him only good fake news all the time, or you tell the truth and you risk losing your job and getting fired, as many people already have. It's sort of like working for one of those authoritarian dictators that have to be placated at all times, which is yet another similarity between Donald Trump and that group, which is a group not typically similar to or associated with the American president, but of course that has changed significantly under Donald Trump. And there's this really strange circle when it comes to the polling, because the regular sort of MAGA-ite Trumpist talking point is we can't trust the polls because in 2016, the polls said Hillary would win and Hillary lost. Of course, the truth is that the national polls in 2016 said Hillary would win the popular vote by 2 to 3 points, and Hillary won the popular vote by 2 to 3 points. But it doesn't matter. The MAGA-ite talking point is the polls are fake. So now the polls say Trump is losing, and they see that as confirmation that the polls are biased because they were supposedly wrong in 2016, even though they weren't. And they don't even consider the possibility that Donald Trump could actually be losing. So the result is that the pollsters actually are the ones that get fired. Here's the end of the line. We want Donald Trump to believe that 2020 is in the bag. Every left-wing voter needs to not believe that the election is in the bag and that your vote could make the difference in whatever state you're voting in. I did a story earlier today between foreign interference and gerrymandering and voter suppression. We will only win this election if we overcome all of that stuff. We can control turnout, and enough turnout will override all of that other stuff, period. But you've got to get out there and vote. We want Trump to think he's winning. We want Trump to stay home. But in the end, every single voter needs to believe, because it could be the case, that their vote could make or break their state for Trump or whoever the eventual Democratic nominee will be. That's the way I voted in Massachusetts, and I'm still going to be operating under that assumption.